if I can actually get a hold of a character and just kind of hold on to their tail and let them guide me around, that's the greatest pleasure for me in writing, is the discovery and the surprise. I feel like I can reach characters more quickly since becoming a mom. I have less judgment, fewer expectations, less restraint. No life is boring. And in fact, I find the lives that appear the most ordinary on the surface to be the most extraordinarily interesting.
Hello, and welcome to Elena Meets the Author. I am your host, Elena Bose. This podcast explores how authors create a world that we can escape into. Join me as we demystify the magic that authors use to keep us turning the page. Today, I'm speaking to Rebecca Kauffman, whose latest novel, The Reservation, initially looks like a whodunit. 22 ribeye steaks go missing from Aunt Orsa's, an upscale Italian restaurant in a fictional Midwestern college town. And those steaks disappear on the same day that celebrity author John Grisham is due to dine at Aunt Orsa's. But this whodunit quickly morphs into a who are they? Kauffman is brilliant at studying people. Who are these ordinary people who work at Aunt Orsa's? Turns out none of them are ordinary. The book's table of contents is renamed Menu, and each course or chapter delves into the life of one of the suspects. No one at Aunt Orsa's is above suspicion, and no one's life is boring. Kauffman has a real talent for believable dialogue, telling us just enough about a person so we feel like we know that person, and making us want to know more. Welcome to the show, Rebecca. I'm so glad you could make it.
Thank you so much, Elena. I'm pleased to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Anytime. So, Publishers Weekly called the book a pitch-perfect mashup between Clue and The Bear, a stolen steaks whodunit. The staff become unhinged when one too many catastrophes occur. One walks out. Another accidentally slices his finger while chopping cabbage. There are accusations hurling around everywhere, all on the very same day that celebrity guest John Grisham is coming to dine. Did you set out to write a mystery, or did the mystery become the Trojan horse for something else? And why John Grisham?
Oh, good questions. I set out to write a book that took place in a restaurant before I developed the concept for the mystery. So if you can bear with me through a little bit of backstory about this story, between my last few novels, I have had the impulse to write something that's way outside of my comfort zone, and it has, in every case, ended disastrously. So in between each published novel, I have ended up with a manuscript that is ultimately not publishable. And when I finished my previous book, I once again found myself with this perverse and inconvenient desire to write something kind of wacky and weird. But I somehow convinced myself that it was going to be a collection of first-person vignettes, somewhat taken from my own life. And in this way, I was able to get this bad book out, but it only took a couple of weeks instead of, months and months or years and years. So I was kind of tickled to feel like I had outsmarted myself in this way. So I wrote this collection of vignettes, somewhat autobiographical, and shared them with my agent. I was like, I had a lot of fun writing these. I doubt if they're publishable, but what do you think? And she read them and was like, I had a lot of fun reading these. I don't think they're publishable. So then I was able to just put that project to bed. But as it turns out, a few of these vignettes took place in the restaurant world. And I worked in loads of restaurants from the time I was a teenager into my 30s, on and off, but many restaurants, many different roles within restaurants. And somehow this was the first that I had really, really taken that experience and used it, fictionalized it, and used it in my own work. So when I was looking at these vignettes, after it was clear that that was a project that would not advance, I found that those were the ones that had some fun and some energy to me. And I was like, oh, maybe there's something there. So that was how I decided to set a novel in the restaurant world.
Right.
Was to build on those. And then I pretty quickly developed the concept for a mystery. The idea of the theft popped into my head. And I don't know, the way that small mishaps in a restaurant can just tornado into something huge and catastrophic is yeah, it was fun. It was funny to me. So I developed this concept for the theft and decided that it needed to take place over the course of one day. Really have this condensed timeline, treat it as a character study, moving from one staff member to the next. So I came up with all of these ideas and then more or less wrote the mystery, not knowing who the thief was going to be until practically that point in the story. And it wasn't until I had finished a draft or maybe even a second draft that I decided I needed to sort of heighten the tension a bit more going into this particular shift at the restaurant. So I was like, there's this theft and clearly everyone's going to be on edge and gossiping and the owner is going to be upset and offended by this. But what would make this shift even more consequential? And that's when I thought, well, maybe I'll bring in a guest of some import. And I considered the idea of, a big time food reviewer, but then I was like, oh, is he really?
Right. Go to Aunt Orsa's.
Right. Or a celebrity. And then it popped into my head that John Grisham actually was a guest at a restaurant that I worked at in my hometown. So where I live now is about an hour away from Charlottesville, where I believe he lives. And I live in a college town. So he came to dine at the restaurant that I worked at. Gosh, it's been 10 years ago, probably. And nothing interesting happened on the occasion of his visit at all, except that everyone who interacted with him said he was just the loveliest gentleman. But he is the figure that sort of popped into my head when I had already basically conceived of this mystery of sorts.
Okay. So on to the menu structure, which I think is original and people have asked you about, and I love it. So instead of a table of contents, you have a menu, and each character is a dish, a 16-course menu, and it's described from their own unique perspective. So your book feels in a way that it's like linked short stories, than more than one continuous narrative. So I was wondering, did that help you? Did that free you in terms of writing the book, having that structure?
Boy, I wish I could take credit for the structure and for the menu table of contents. That was a creative decision that came from my publisher. I had the chapters, of course, constructed and titled according to job title for the staff members, but they came up with that particular presentation, which I love. Calling it a menu, I think also sort of evokes the idea of the flow of a meal, the different courses that you can expect and how it takes time, how things develop, how one course relates to the one that came before and introduces you to the next one after. So I thought that made so much sense and was kind of upset that I didn't come up with that idea on my own. But yeah, so I have to credit my publishing team for coming up with the menu idea. The idea to organize and title chapters based on the different staff members. To me, that just seemed intuitively like the right way to tell the story and to introduce the staff members more or less at the order in which they would arrive for their shift at the restaurant. Right. So chronologically according to as they arrive and or when they learn of the theft, which in most cases that was the same individual. And yeah, it also felt true to me to the restaurant staff experience in the sense that the first couple people who you encounter, the operations assistant, the owner is an exception to this, but the pastry chef, the pantry cook, the prep cook, they have very little overlap with the evening crew. So as a reader, I don't know if you found yourself like with any glancing thoughts towards those first staff members who really came and set the stage for the meal. But in the restaurant world, I mean, an entire evening shift can go by in the name of the pastry chef who created the desserts that you're serving all evening. That name might not even cross your mind or
because they've already left
your consciousness. Right. So it is like a passing of baton of the duties. And felt like the right.
You do it well because you do have a feeling of the day. And also I think it's great that it's just one day in the life of this restaurant. So you mentioned that you worked in restaurants for many, many years to support yourself. And then I was wondering, when you were working in these restaurants, were you taking notes? Were you thinking like a writer like Byron a character, the wannabe novelist. I think he's a server back then, or did this all come to you later?
I was not taking notes, and I wasn't, for most of these years, I was not writing actively. And I'm trying to think at what point I started. I don't think I was ever consciously filing things away with the intention of using them fictionally, but I think I do have sort of an uncanny memory for people, the way people talk, the things people do, the amusing ways that we make our way through life. And, a restaurant is just so ripe for hilarity. People act so outrageously as guests and staff. As just funny stuff happens at restaurants all the time. You find dirty diapers under tables at the end of a shift at a beautiful fine dining restaurant.
Right.
You have guests who say there cannot be one speck of butter on their side dish because they have a terrible fatal allergy, and then 2 hours later they're chowing down on ice cream for dessert. People just act in such hilarious ways. And so I remember those things when they tickle me. I've always had just a deep and my husband would say unnatural interest in other people's lives.
But that's a writer.
Yeah. I loved what you said in your introduction. I appreciate too that you said none of their lives are boring or something along those lines. That is how I feel about the world. No life is boring. And in fact, I find the lives that appear the most ordinary on the surface to be the most extraordinarily interesting. I find the most, I enjoy looking for the most richness and complexity in the lives that seem the most inane, just to look at them on paper or on their surface. And
that's clear. In your book.
Thank you.
One of the things I was thinking is, ages ago, I interviewed Lily King about writers and lovers. And I remember, which has got a whole waitress thing, and she was a waitress. And I remember her telling me that she thought working in restaurants was a great thing for writers because the world, you see how people really behave, both front of house and back of house. And also writing is very solitary and sedentary. So she said it's a great counterbalance it's a great career, a side career to make money if you are a writer. But she got a lot of her input, just like you did, because people do act. I suppose in the back of the house, there's a lot of chaos that you have to then present like there's no chaos. Interesting, you only show 2 diners. It's much more the staff. And I found those 2 diners, that was very sad, the story there. So as background for listeners, that's two worn out parents dining on a fake gift certificate from their son who's in rehab. And the father bringing in cash just in case, because deep down he knows there's a chance the gift certificate is fake. And I love the way this, you never give too much details. Like you have to surmise that it's the son. I love the way you make the reader kind of work a bit. So the whole family's heartbreak is just in a paragraph. How do you figure out which are the details that you're going to keep and which are going to leave out? Because you never say it's the son, but you obviously hinted.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. That's really kind. And I'm glad you brought up Lily King too. She is an absolute hero. Writers and Lovers was a major influence on this book. She's incredible, truly incredible.
Yeah.
Gosh, I usually find that the point of revision in which I'm taking things out rather than putting them in is when the book is actually starting to get good or better. So I need to know much more than I need the reader to know. I find that for me, proximity to character is what drives the voice. I've been asked about this book a handful of times, how I created a different voice for each character. And to me, I don't feel like that's the case at all. It's funny. I don't know how to think about voice. I don't know how to talk about voice, except to say that I must be as close to a character as possible. I need to know all of the things that they fear. I need to know what they can't speak aloud. I need to know what makes them laugh, what makes them tick, what time they get up in the morning, what their daily routine looks like, and what they desire deeply, what they don't even know they desire deeply. So I need to know as much as possible, but the reader doesn't and shouldn't. And I will say that at the same time that I'm trying to get to the absolute center of a character, know as much as I possibly can. At the same time, I'm trying to honor what is still mysterious about them, even being that close. And I say this because this is how I experience life, how I experience myself as a person, is that I don't know myself fully. I feel that there are mysteries of my psyche, my family's history, the world around me. There are things that I don't understand about my own mind and heart. And so I want to honor that in my characters as well. So I'm trying to like do two very contradictory things when I'm creating a character and deciding what details to include and what to omit or what to withhold. I'm trying to give the reader a satisfying amount of information that can explain psychologically, familially, if that's a word, I'm trying to provide some guidance or some explanation as to why a person might be behaving the way that they're behaving.
Yeah.
Why there might be certain resentments that bubble up in unexpected moments, why certain things are funny to someone. And so I'm trying to provide some guidance and some explanation, but still at the very same time convey that we are mysterious. Our hearts are mysterious fundamentally, which I do believe is the case. And so I'm trying to do both things. And I can't necessarily explain or trace back how I make specific decisions, except to say that those are sort of my guiding lights.
So you've got Byron, your wannabe novelist, server, who has no moral qualms about lifting his next chapter from his co-workers' lives. And then you have Jane, the Mennonite baker, who is shocked to hear that Byron is sort of watching her because he might be taking notes for his book. And then she says that she thinks Byron is just a fraud. He's comfortable putting forth an absolutely preposterous lie as if it had a certain greasy sheen of truth to it. That's the quote. How close to the bone is that for you? Do you share your character's wariness of writers as thieves?
Yeah, I do. It's complicated because storytelling is deeply, deeply important to me as a writer and a reader and as a person. And at the same time, there is an aspect of making a piece of life into a story that is inherently manipulative. It's because we not just as writers, but as people, we know a good story when we hear it, and we can hone the stories that we tell to be better as stories by changing the arc a little bit, changing certain details. And yeah, there is a level of like manipulation that takes place in the telling or retelling of any story on the page or off. And yeah, there is discomfort there. Yeah, for me personally.
Did you have anybody in particular in this that you were at all worried about? I know this is fiction, but did you think, God, if this person reads it, they're going to know this is them? Or
No, I didn't.
No, okay.
Yeah, I work really hard to distance characters from actual people in my life. Yeah, I feel like you can just completely implode your personal life if you go there. And so I don't go there with my fiction. I often take inspiration from things that I observe in the world and people that I observe, of course. I think all writers do. But even with a stranger, if I'm taking them from the world and putting them on the page, I will change any identifying details. Since you asked, Aunt Orsa is the first character who I created in this book, and she was so very, very distantly, loosely based on a bar regular at a fine dining restaurant that I worked at in New York when I was a college student. And oh gosh, she was just awful. And she tipped horribly. She would leave, a couple coins on like a dirty dollar tip. And she was always mad about something, always all bent out of shape about something, and would happily tell, the bartender, server, host, or whomever whoever's attention she could manage to keep. She would happily talk about all of her grievances, and nobody else on staff wanted anything to do with her, knowing that she would talk their ear off and think horribly. But I would see her come and like my eyes would light up. I was like, send her to me. I love it. I found her so entertaining. And so there is this that's funny. Yeah. Like unfortunate part of my personality that is like, not only willing to like endure time with unpleasant people, but I will actually seek it out because it's good content. You never know. And those kind of people are interesting characters. Yeah. So another interesting character, I mean, all of them are interesting, but Jane, the very private Mennonite pastry chef, asks Edgar, the Guatemalan prep cook who lives in his car, to give her a ride to a women's doctor appointment. Mm-hmm. She says it's just a routine thing, but we never hear from them again in the story. Mm-hmm. So that was like a total other mystery. It's like, what happened to them on this day where all this chaos is happening? They leave and we never hear from them again. Did you know that you were going to do that like leave this loose end for the reader to be like, I have no idea what happened to them. Are they okay? I don't even know why she was going because she said it was just routine, but was it routine? Mm-hmm. There was a lot of things that made you wonder. Couldn't walk in by herself, Mm-hmm. Yeah. I really, really enjoyed creating their friendship and the friendship between Edgar and Jane. And that sort of came as a surprise to me. I thought that they would have some sort of contentious banter, I think, is what I imagined when I first created them as characters. And I'm not usually consciously aware that I'm doing this as I'm doing it, but when I look back at the cast of characters that I've created, it's so often clear to me that I was working in contrast. So the book opens with Danny, who's a young man, timid, uncertain, very private. And then you meet Aunt Orsa, who's, older woman, totally bombastic, very confrontational. And then you meet Jane, who again is very private and modest. And then you meet Edgar, who, according to him, is hard partying, et cetera. So I see that when I'm adding characters to the mix, I'm creating contrast. I'm trying to keep every new person, just keep the full body of people feeling, fresh and layered. So I think that's why and how I came up with these two very, very different characters. I did not expect them to become friends. But as I was writing a first draft, and writing a first draft is always my favorite part of the process, when I'm just, if I can actually get a hold of a character and, just kind of hold on to their tail and let them guide me around. That's the greatest pleasure for me in writing, is the discovery and the surprise. And it was a huge surprise to me that these two had such affection for one another. And it does make sense. I think in Jane's perspective, Edgar is the only one on staff who actually sees her as more than her traditional Mennonite clothing. Right. He sees her as a person. He's not afraid to curse around her. He's not afraid to tell stories of his life. And despite what he's concealing, he actually treats her like an adult. And he asks a lot of questions. He's very blunt with his questions. He's curious. Yes. So they share a bond, and they end up sharing information with one another about their lives that they haven't shared with anyone on staff, and perhaps not anyone outside of the restaurant either. And I have a few small ideas about what I didn't include about the rest of their day. Yeah. But I actually try not to follow that too far in my own mind. So we talked a little bit earlier about which details I try to include and which I decide to omit. But if we're speaking in terms of looking ahead in time, like what happens after what you see on the page, I sort of try not to go there, because to me, the arc is complete. Once a story or once a character has made their exit from this story, that their story is complete to me. And that's really all I know. I have a few ideas, but I don't linger on them.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's interesting too that you say your first draft is your favorite part, because I've definitely talked to writers who hate the first draft, and they say that they know they're going to throw it out. They know it's no good, but they just have to get it done. And also, I guess they love the teamwork later of working with your editor after the first draft. But you love the first draft because that's when you really get to know your characters.
I love the first draft. I used to be the opposite. My first couple books, I felt similarly. Couldn't stand the first draft, just had to get it down, knew it would be awful, knew I would just be fumbling along awkwardly in the dark. And then when I finally had a couple hundred pages, then I could happily return to them and be like, okay, now how do we get there? But it's completely reversed for me. Yeah, the last 3-ish books, I would say, which are the ones that feel closest to me, I have loved the first draft. It has felt like play. It has felt like discovery. It has felt like just every corner that I go around, there's something new to find. And then revision is what I struggle with now. I love my editor, and my agent works with me editorially as well. I adore both of them. But there's for me, every draft beyond the first draft, the pleasure is diminished incrementally.
Yeah,
it's just because I'm not going for, perfection, or, I just like the way that I have written the last few books. And I think this is a stage of life thing too, but the fun in the discovery is where the joy is.
Do you think it's a question of like becoming more confident in yourself as a writer, so you trust that you have fun a bit?
Yeah, I think there is something there. And I think, it might not always be the case that this is, the way that I feel about it either. I feel like this could very easily change. I do think the last couple books I've written have been since becoming a mother, and I was resigned to not writing at all. When I decided I would be a stay-at-home mom, I thought, well, I'm just not going to write. And I found that I just had a completely different energy for it, and I have written more quickly and more joyfully since becoming a mom. It's like time is very short. I have two now, 2 kids
How
now.
old?
They're boys. They are 4 and 5, and they are wild. But yeah, since having them, I don't have very much time to myself. But when I do, the joy of discovery is, I think it's like the proximity to them seeing the world for the first time. It's not that I'm seeing the world for the first time, but I am certainly seeing the world differently. And I'm so close to people who are seeing the world for the first time. And I just feel like I can.
Well, interesting. You mean your children?
Yes.
You're so close to them, so it helps your view. Oh.
I think, I don't know if it helps my view, but it's just a different type of creativity. I mean, it's okay. I'm trying to think. I feel like I can reach characters more quickly since becoming a mom. I have less judgment, fewer expectations, less restraint. I can just get to someone more quickly on the page somehow and enjoy it more. Yeah, just find more to notice in people, more to enjoy, more to love. And so writing has felt really different to me these last couple years. Like I said, it feels like play in a way too, and that's
fantastic.
Or like proximity to little boys' minds. Yeah, yeah.
So Orsa, at one point, Aunt Orsa, says as a quote, "Life was so full of misunderstandings. See, it wasn't weird to Orsa that the baby had died. Everybody died. It was weird that a person could live even one day, even 1 minute, with a hole in their heart." So I really loved that quote. And I mean, I loved you've got some very profound quotes throughout the book. But that one, I thought, okay, you've got Orsa's gruff and tender voice. She's blunt about death, but she's awed by its fragility. And to me, it feels a little bit like the soul of the book, because all of the characters, once you get to know them, they have a hole in their heart. They're missing something. They're seeking connection. They're lonely. They're looking for community. They're damaged. So I was wondering if that's about right. Were you thinking that? The whole of the heart, you can live with that. Most people live with it for a lot longer than a day or a year. It could be a whole lifetime.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't matter what my feelings about a character are when I first encounter them. I always love them. I always love them. Even the horrific Aunt Orsa, I love her. And the more time that I spend with them, the closer I am. I talked about proximity. I can honor just the complexity of what might be missing. In some cases it's spelled out on the page, and in many cases it's not. But yeah, it's that mysterious absence that we all have. It's the bigger mystery and it's the smaller mysteries. And yeah, it's part of every character. And I think this is how I always come around to a deep, deep love and really hoping the best for my characters is to recognize their private struggle, spoken or not. And yeah, without going into spoilery territory, I kept thinking, who am I going to make the butt of this joke? I viewed the manuscript as or the concept for the book, The Theft, was very funny to me. And I was like, I just am going to write it. I'm going to try and write an absolute romp, just make it as funny as I can, beginning to end. And it became a heavier book as I actually got to know each character and recognize those struggles. And, I kept thinking, like, who's the butt of the joke? And yeah, even when it came to the thief themselves, there was part of me that was like, but that's not the whole story, there's more in that character too.
Totally.
There's more to.
And I've forgotten the name of the head chef. What's his name again?
Chef Oz.
Chef Oz. Even he admits at one point that he knows he's become an asshole.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. He used to be nice, but he knows he's turned into this horrible person. And we know why. And that was profound, that realization. I mean, you do it with each character. So ordinary and unordinary. Your people seem ordinary at first, servers, cookers, a busser, a hostess, and yet no one's backstory is as simple as it seems. I think I know the answer is, well, do you start from the ordinary, or do you already see the unordinary before you start writing?
Oh boy, that's a really good question. I think for this book, I saw the person on paper before I saw their layers. I've started to think about the different layers of a person as overtones. So like within a scene or with a person, you have the fundamental tone. This is like a musical term. So in any given pitch, you have the fundamental note, which is what your ear perceives most clearly. It's the actual pitch that you hear. So on the page, you have a scene, like what's actually happening in real time, or a character with a very straightforward description, job title or whatever. And then in a musical pitch, the overtone refers to the other tones that are much softer, but they contribute to that fundamental tone. They're layered up an octave or more, different intervals. They all exist and they all contribute to what the listener hears, despite them being much softer.
The thesis, via the unnamed bar guest. So we don't know who this person is that arrives almost at closing time. And he delivers what could be the book's quiet core. So according to this guest, whoever he is, he says, a story, quote, was never merely one thing. And regardless of who was telling it, how hard they worked to hew to the facts, a story, as every storyteller knows, was never true. And that, I was going to say, but I guess you've already said it. Is that your philosophy of storytelling? And is it freeing or unsettling to believe that the story is never true?
It's both.
Freeing. Oh.
Yeah. I would say that is the thesis. And I find it both unsettling and freeing, because even understanding that we cannot tell a story that is 100% true, that is outside of our capacity, I think we can still acknowledge that truth exists and that we can perhaps glance up against it or, touch it or sense it, even if the language that we use to tell a story is not is not true in every moment and on every page. There are larger truths that I think fiction can point towards without articulating them.
Yeah, and everybody has a perspective. Everybody has a different perspective on a story. Noticing. Okay, your story takes place over a single day, yet it's packed with flashbacks. And in only one case that I could see did we jump forward in time. Right? And that's Aunt the busser, who was in high school at the time of the story. And he felt above his fellow workers because he thought he was going to accomplish great things and that they were all lifers in the restaurant. So you fast forward 30 years and Aunt is actually become an orthopedic surgeon. His wife, you say, or whatever the story says, whom he loves, is leaving him. His teenage children refuse to talk to him at dinner. And he says, my God, what was I doing instead of noticing? So to me, he's the inverse of the whole book. So while you notice everyone, we go into each character, he kind of missed it all. And so I was wondering again, is noticing a moral act for you?
Gosh, I would hesitate to define it for me as a moral act, but I will say, like, there have certainly been times in my life when I, as a younger person, thought, but this is not yet my real life. I had the sense that, like, this isn't really it yet. And how much did I miss, on account of that perspective? And I think that that's what Aunt is thinking when he's seeing all these people around him. He's like, okay, I'm here putting in time, but this isn't my actual life. And I think it's so important to recognize that it all is. It is all our actual life. And, even when you're back in the dish pit, like hating every second of it, like that's your life too. That was my life too. And especially, since having children now, the noticing feels like so crucial to, just being in it with them. That's what it all is, like stacking 25 blocks and seeing if we can get to 26 next time. It's like, that is my actual life. And not just expecting that turning around the next corner will make it something better or even different. It is all life. It is all worth noticing. Yeah.
Okay. So this is your sixth novel. And I think you said you felt closer, you experienced joy in the last three. So would you say that the Reservation is a departure, or it's something you've been circling around from your previous books? Like, is this the fullest version of something you've been circling from the start? And after a year inside of Aunt Orsa's, what's still feeding you as you look to your next writing project?
It's hard to describe if and how my books relate to each other. I don't see Aunt Orsa I don't see The Reservation as a culmination or anything that relates in a super specific way to what came before, except to say that I think it does reflect the stage of life that I was in when I wrote it, which was toddlers. So my previous novel, I'll Come to You, I wrote right after I'd had my second child. So I was nursing a newborn and chasing after a toddler. I barely even remember writing that book, but it will always hold like a very special place in my heart because it feels like it was written in a fever dream. I wasn't sleeping. I was, just in this completely foreign consciousness. And I wrote that book very, very quickly. And then The Reservation was written a year or two later when I was just chasing after, a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old. And they were just making me laugh all the time. And life just felt so chaotic and so full of conflict and hilarity. And so while I wasn't aware of it at the time, I do think The Reservation kind of reflects that aspect of life at that time.
Chaos.
And also, chaos, hilarity, like conflict, mountains out of molehills, sort of thing. And also, as I'm sure as a mother and grandmother, the days can feel very long. And so I'm looking back now and remembering how life felt when my boys were a couple years younger and It's what every parent says, the weeks and months and years fly by, but the days crawl. And that is, so I wrote 250 or whatever pages, and it all takes place within more or less 12 hours. And that is kind of how
that
life
is funny.
with toddlers feels as well. You've lived an eternity in every 12 hours.
Oh, I just yesterday, I couldn't wait to see my 2-year-old grandson, and he's adorable. But I remember taking him to go scootering, and I didn't realize he doesn't really know how to scooter. All he wanted to do was drag it up a ramp and then watch it go down. Drag it up. And I looked, and I'm like, oh God, I've been here 10 minutes. She told me not to come back for an hour. Do we do this for another 50 minutes?
I can so intimately understand this.
Very boring, even though he's adorable. So are you working on anything now? Are you doing that horrible? Are you past the part where you think you have to throw it out?
I am. I did the same thing. I wrote like 20 pages of absolute garbage and then was like, that was it. It's out of my system. I'm ready. I'm ready to write the real thing. So right now I'm working on edits to a novel and then starting to think about the one after that. So,
wow. Yeah. Do you have a contract?
I do. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know yet when it'll be published.
Okay.
But yeah, that one, we're wrapping up edits now. So
fantastic. Total departure, not in a restaurant.
Not in a restaurant. Yeah, it's the story of a married couple who the father has inherited his family's orchards, but they are in financial trouble, and he decides upon their pregnancy to leave the family farm and take a job as a janitor at a local university for the benefits, the consistent paycheck, and also with the hope of being able to offer their child free tuition. This is a working class couple. The mother as well. So they're very hopeful of being able to provide a university education for their child that they wouldn't be able to pay for outside of this scenario. So the book is basically a countdown to their child, coming of age and that point in his life. So I sort of wanted to explore like the idea of sacrifice and at what point does a gift become a burden.
So it takes place over like 18 years.
Yeah.
Versus a day.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, I can't wait to read that too.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for today. It was really interesting, and I had a lot of, I loved your book, but I also had a lot of questions, and I love so many quotes, and just, you've given me food for thought. So thank you again.
Thank you. This was a lot of fun, Elena.
I love the fact that Rebecca wrote this book while chasing 2 toddlers around. So, as she said, in a way, her life echoed the tone of the book, the daily chaos of parenting and working in a restaurant, how long a day can seem at a restaurant and while looking after a small child or two. And of course, all the petty fights that happen in both instances. Rebecca brings up a lot of interesting points in this interview. Is someone missing if that person isn't missed? Do we ever really know ourselves fully? Or are we a bit of a mystery even to ourselves? And are we always present in our world? Or are we waiting for real life to happen? Because guess what? This is real life, so you might as well pay attention. And finally, she says that all stories are a bit of a lie. You know the expression, never let the truth get in the way of a good story? Kind of true. So that's it for today. Thank you for listening and see you in 2 weeks.